The truth behind the $2,000 tariff rebate checks. For weeks now, millions of Americans have been hearing rumors about a brand new $2,000 tariff rebate check supposedly arriving before Christmas. These rumors spread across Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and even community forums where people desperately look for answers. And it makes sense. Prices are high, budgets are stretched, and the holidays always bring additional pressure. When people hear that a check might be coming, hope naturally rises. But today we're breaking everything down with facts only. No hype, no rumors, no misleading headlines. The idea of a $2,000 check actually comes from former President Trump's proposal to create a tariff dividend funded by money collected from tariffs on imported goods. According to the proposal, the government would collect taxes on foreign-made products and redirect some of that money back to American households. The idea itself isn't new. Trump talked about this during his campaign and mentioned it again several times after taking office. He argued that the money should go directly to working class and middle-income Americans who have been dealing with years of rising prices. But here's the important truth. There is no approved program, no legal authority, no IRS process, and no scheduled payment for 2025. In fact, the IRS publicly confirmed that they are not preparing any new payments because Congress has not passed any new law. The IRS cannot issue a $2,000 payment or any federal payment without a bill that has been debated, voted on, funded, and signed into law. Even more important, Trump himself recently clarified that the payments would not arrive this year. When asked if the checks could come before Christmas, he said no, and added that the idea is still being developed. He suggested the earliest timeline would be sometime in 2026, possibly aligning with the midterm elections. That means no December payment, no surprise IRS deposit, no early Christmas stimulus, and no emergency last-minute credit. As much as people would love for the rumors to be true, the facts clearly show that the government is nowhere near launching this program in 2025. Why payments cannot legally happen in 2025. Now let's break down why no payments can legally happen this year, because it's not simply a matter of will or desire, it's a matter of process, law, and federal timelines. To send a federal payment to the public, three major steps must happen. 1. Congress must pass a bill. This requires debates, negotiations, and approval from both the House and the Senate. Right now, no such bill exists. Not even a draft has been introduced. 2. The president must sign that bill into law. Without this step, the IRS cannot act. The law is what gives funding and legal authority. 3. The IRS must build the payment system. This part is often forgotten. Even after the law passes, it takes the IRS months to establish income rules, verify tax records, test payment systems, coordinate with banks, set up a call center and website, create fraud protections, and design an official schedule. If Congress magically drafted and passed a bill tomorrow, which is nearly impossible in the current political climate, there still would not be enough time for the IRS to distribute any payment before December 2025. We saw this during the pandemic. Even with emergency powers, national urgency, and bipartisan cooperation, it still took weeks for the first checks to go out. And those programs were built on systems that already existed. This proposed tariff dividend is brand new and would require building an entirely new system from scratch. This is exactly why Trump himself said the payments would not arrive this year. It's not because he rejected the idea, it's because the federal machinery simply cannot move fast enough. So when you see videos or posts online claiming checks coming Friday or IRS payment confirmed, those are simply not true. There is no legal pathway, no financial authorization, and no operational infrastructure to support any payment in 2025. This is why the earliest realistic timeline is sometime in 2026, if the program ever becomes law. Tariff revenue. The math behind the proposal. Now let's talk about the numbers, because the financial math is one of the biggest challenges facing this proposal. Supporters often argue that tariff revenue is more than enough to fund a nationwide $2,000 check, but when you look closely, the numbers tell a more complicated story. Tariff revenue for 2025 is currently estimated at around $195 billion. That is a significant amount of money. But now let's compare that to the price tag of sending $2,000 to every qualifying American. If the program used a standard income limit, similar to past stimulus programs, it would likely include about 150 million adults earning under $100,000 per year. Multiply that population by $2,000, and you get a total cost of $300 billion. That means the program is short by more than $100 billion, and that gap doesn't even include administrative costs, which could be in the billions. So the government would have three choices: reduce the payment amount from $2,000 to something smaller, limit eligibility to fewer people, borrow the difference, and increase the national deficit. None of these choices are simple, and all would face political opposition. Economists also point out another issue. Tariff revenue isn't fixed. It depends heavily on consumer demand. If Americans buy fewer imported goods, revenue drops. That makes it risky to promise a large, stable payment funded entirely by tariffs. Some experts argue that the proposal could work if the government combined tariff revenue with traditional funding sources. Others say the math will never fully line up unless tariffs dramatically increase, which could raise prices for consumers. In short, while tariff revenue is real and significant, it is not enough on its own to support a $2,000 nationwide payment, at least not with the current income eligibility assumptions. This financial gap is one reason Congress hasn't moved quickly to draft legislation. The idea is not impossible, but the math must be solved before anything becomes real. Who might qualify if the program becomes law? Even though no official rules exist yet, many Americans want to understand who might qualify if the program eventually becomes law. To predict this, we can look at previous federal payment programs, especially the pandemic stimulus checks, which used well-established income models. Here are the most likely income limits lawmakers would consider: up to $75,000 for individuals, up to $150,000 for married couples, reduced payments for incomes slightly above those levels, full exclusions for high-income households. These limits have been standard for years because they target the middle-income group that policymakers focus on most. So, who might benefit? Let's break it down. 1. Working parents' families. Struggling with childcare, groceries, transportation, and rising rent would likely qualify. These households have faced some of the highest inflation pressure. 2. Seniors on Social Security. Older Americans, particularly those living on fixed incomes, are some of the hardest hit by inflation. They may be included automatically, just as they were in past programs. 3. Veterans receiving VA benefits. Many veterans live on fixed or limited incomes. A rebate check could help offset medical, housing, and daily expenses. 4. Disabled Americans on SSI or SSDI. These programs provide minimal monthly support. This group would likely qualify due to their low income status. 5. Unemployed workers actively searching for jobs. Even without taxable income, unemployed Americans were included in past stimulus programs. The same could apply here. 6. Low-income workers without dependents. This group often earns too much to qualify for benefits, but too little to stay ahead financially. Still, it's critical to understand that none of these groups are guaranteed. Until Congress writes and passes an official bill, every income limit, every category, and every cutoff is purely speculative. No one should assume they are guaranteed to receive $2,000 until the law is formally created. Will $2,000 checks help or hurt the economy? There's no doubt that a $2,000 check would help millions of Americans struggling with high prices. Many households are dealing with rising grocery costs, expensive housing, increasing insurance premiums, and higher medical bills. A one-time infusion of $2,000 could catch people up on overdue utilities, credit card balances, or essential travel needs. But economists are divided on whether this kind of payment is a smart move for the economy as a whole. Supporters argue that the additional money would boost consumer spending, strengthen demand, and give families some relief from inflation. They say it could help stabilize household finances and strengthen the middle class. Critics, however, warn that the country may still be vulnerable to inflationary pressure. When a government injects hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy at once, prices can rise quickly. This is exactly what happened after the pandemic stimulus checks. Those checks helped families, but they also contributed to inflation, one of several factors that pushed prices higher. Another concern is stagflation, a situation where the economy slows down while prices continue rising. A temporary burst of spending from the checks might boost the economy briefly, but once the money is gone, the economy could weaken again while prices remain elevated. This kind of outcome is particularly harmful for seniors and people on fixed incomes. There's also the question of long-term debt. If the government borrows money to fund the payments, it adds to the national deficit. Some economists argue that the nation cannot sustain more debt without risking financial instability. Others say that investments in working families always pay off in the long run. In reality, there is no perfect answer. A $2,000 check would bring real, immediate relief to millions of households. but it could also contribute to inflation or long-term economic challenges. Lawmakers will need to balance both sides carefully before approving any program. Why the government needs months to launch a program. Even if the administration decided today that the $2,000 checks must happen immediately, the federal government cannot sprint into action overnight. The process is slow, heavily regulated, and designed to prevent mistakes, fraud, and improper payments. Here's what would need to happen. Step 1. Drafting the bill. Lawyers, policy advisors, and budget analysts must prepare hundreds of pages of legal language describing eligibility rules, funding sources, administrative procedures, and oversight requirements. Step 2. Congressional review. The proposed bill must pass through committees in the House and Senate. Witnesses testify, revisions are made, and budget projections are reviewed. Step 3. Full votes. Both chambers must approve identical versions of the bill. If changes are made, the process must repeat until both sides agree. Step 4. Presidential signature. The president signs the bill, officially turning it into law. Step 5. IRS implementation. This is the longest step. The IRS must update computer systems, verify and match taxpayer data, set up distribution networks with banks, update irs.gov and call centers, create fraud protection software, generate official notices and mailers, schedule payment waves, and prepare audit and oversight documents. During the pandemic, the IRS struggled with backlogs, staffing shortages, and outdated computer systems. Even with emergency funding, the rollout of stimulus checks was not instant. This new program would be even more complex because it is not connected to pre-existing frameworks. This is why experts insist that a 2025 payout is impossible, and why Trump himself said payments would not arrive until sometime in 2026. The machinery of government simply moves slowly, and the IRS cannot distribute money without proper authorization, data systems, and verification tools already in place. Why the idea still isn't dead. Even with all the delays, uncertainties, and legal barriers, one thing is very clear. The idea of a $2,000 tariff rebate check is still alive. In politics, some ideas disappear quickly, while others remain in the national conversation until someone eventually turns them into law. This proposal falls into the second category. The reason is simple. Americans are struggling. Inflation has hit working families, seniors, veterans, and disabled Americans the hardest. Housing is less affordable than ever. Medical costs continue rising. Groceries take up a bigger portion of household budgets. Even people who earn a decent income feel squeezed. Because of that, direct payments remain highly popular. Support for relief checks crosses political lines. People see them as straightforward, fair, and immediate. Unlike long-term tax reforms or complicated credit programs, a direct check is easy to understand and helps quickly. Trump continues to mention the idea in speeches and interviews. That alone keeps the proposal alive. Historically, once a president, current or former, makes an idea central to their message, lawmakers eventually take it seriously. Tariff revenue also gives the proposal a built-in funding mechanism. Even though the revenue falls short of covering the full cost, it provides a foundation. Senators and representatives are already discussing whether the idea can be modified, scaled, or combined with other funding sources. Another reason the idea remains active is public pressure. When millions of Americans comment on videos, write emails to lawmakers, and share their financial struggles, Washington listens. Public demand has pushed legislation forward many times before, so while the program is nowhere near ready, it is far from dead. It has political momentum, public support, and recurring national attention. The question is no longer, is the idea real, but rather, how and when will lawmakers decide to act? Final answer, no checks this year, but 2026 is possible. After breaking down every part of the proposal, the conclusion is absolutely clear. No $2,000 checks will be issued this year. There is no law, no bill, no IRS program, no approved funding, and no December schedule. There is no pre-Christmas payment coming. Anyone claiming otherwise is spreading misinformation. The truth is that the earliest realistic timeline is sometime in 2026, and even that depends entirely on Congress taking action soon. The funding gap must be solved, the eligibility rules must be written, and the IRS must be given the time it needs to set up the entire system. But while the answer for this year is no, the bigger message is not yet. The idea is still active, the political momentum is growing, and the need among Americans is undeniable. Millions of people would welcome this relief, not as luxury spending, but as survival support. For many households, $2,000 could cover rent, groceries, medications, or overdue bills. For seniors, it could help with rising prescription costs. For parents, it could cover winter clothing or essential school expenses. So here is the bottom line. No checks in 2025. Possible checks in 2026, if lawmakers act. The idea is still alive. The debate is just beginning. Now, here's a question that matters deeply. If you could speak directly to the president or Congress, what would you tell them about this proposal? Should they speed it up, focus on seniors first, adjust the income limits, protect against inflation, make the payments recurring instead of one time? Your voice matters. Public pressure shapes policy. When lawmakers hear directly from the people they represent, it influences the decisions they make. As updates continue to develop, we will follow every official announcement, every bill proposal, and every IRS statement, bringing you truth without rumors, facts without fear, and clarity without clickbait. And remember one thing, you are not alone in this. Millions of Americans are going through the same, so